Well, folks, Pontiac Dyno Day continues. This is going to be day 2. Hopefully you watched day 1. And we had our 350 HO Pontiac on the dyno up here at Bob McVeigh's place. Watched the previous episode where we actually ran this thing in on the dyno. It did very, very, very well. We ran it. It's on 9-to-1 compression. It's got 62 heads on it. We ran it on a Performer RPM intake manifold with my Quadrajet off of my 1970 Pontiac Le Mans right back there. No adjustments whatsoever to that Quadrajet. What we were trying to do was to prove the difference between a 350 Pontiac and a 350 HO where you spend quite a bit of money in it. It's got a roller valve train, roller camshaft in it. It's got a better intake manifold on it. We showed the difference in power production between this one and that one. This made 295 horsepower, 355 foot-pounds of torque. That one made 370 something horsepower and 400 and almost 20 foot-pounds of torque. So considerably more powerful unit, that one versus that one. So the question was, is the juice worth the squeeze? And I would say the juice is probably worth the squeeze. Now the next question that we need to answer is, what difference do intake manifolds make? And I know a lot of people have been asking about this, so I'm in a position to be able to do it, so we're gonna do it. What we're gonna do today is we're gonna do some intake manifold testing. We have the baseline that we're gonna do on this guy. We're gonna run it here in just a little bit. We gotta put some heat in the engine and in the oil. We're gonna do a baseline on this motor as it sits, and then we're gonna try a couple of different intake manifolds on it. We've got the Performer RPM on there now. I've got a Torker II sitting here. We've got this guy, which is old school Pontiac. This is actually brought up from a viewer out of Southern Ohio. He brought this up here for us to be able to go ahead and test it. No heat crossovers here. So this should be really, really interesting to see. And then in this box, I've got a single plane intake manifold that we're gonna try just for the giggles to see what it does. It should be some interesting testing. It's not anything I've ever seen before, and I'm not getting paid to do this, and I'm not sponsored, so hopefully you guys are gonna be interested in watching this kind of thing. I'm genuinely curious. We are not gonna play with timing. We are not gonna change the carburetor. We're literally just gonna switch intake manifolds. The camshaft is a roller camshaft. I'll give you the camshaft specs. I've given you these over and over again, but I'll give them to you again in this video because it's pertinent to the conversation we're having. So here is our roller camshaft setup. This is an XR 276 HR, 503, 510, 224, 230, lobe separation of 110. This camshaft is designed to pull from like 1500 RPMs to 6500 RPMs. So realistically speaking, it's pretty well matched to that Performer RPM. But a lot of people preach buy other intake manifolds, and I want to see what they truly actually do. What kind of difference it makes. Are we going to see more horsepower out of that Torker? Are we going to see more torque out of that Torker? Where does it move that power band without changing anything? How much does this affect it? Will this actually outflow any of the more modern stuff? I believe this intake is like 30 or 40 years old, not made anymore. And what happens when we just bolt on a single plane that's designed to make power from 3,000 to 7,000? Should be some interesting knowledge. I've never done anything like this, and I've been excited about this since we very first started talking about doing all this Pontiac stuff. Fortunately, Bob is willing to put up with me and let me do this kind of thing, so I greatly appreciate that. But you guys spending your time here is what helps pay the bills for me to actually be able to do this. Yes, sir? Yeah. Huh? Yeah. That's your guess. This is 93. This is more 93. The nice thing is with Pontiacs is the distributor doesn't go through the intake manifold. It's easy to be swapped, so we literally just pull the the grommet on the front where the water is. We need to pull water out of the intake manifold, pull the intake bolts, intake comes back off, swap carburetor around, boom, put it right back down. Life is good. So this should be, at least for us, reasonably quick. I'm hoping to have this whole process done in about 2 hours. Then I got to get back to actual work. But this is the last thing that we're going to do with this 350 HO, as far as I know. And I wanted to be able to film this guy, and hopefully you guys are interested in this. I don't know if we can consider this the ultimate Pontiac intake manifold testing video, but I'm going to do my best.
What, sir?
Got heat in it already?
Yeah, hey, you want to go turn the water on?
There she is. PRW polished water pump, exactly same normal PRW water pump that we always use on everything. It's just this one's polished because I wanted something shiny on the race car motor. We are running the electric water pump situation, which we always run. It does have a set of, as I said, 62 casting heads. These are big valve heads, screw-in studs. We are running 1.5 roller rockers underneath these valve covers. But as far as switching out intake manifolds, it's a reasonably easy process. You just got to pull the water out of it. You got one bolt that holds this here, and then there's a seal that's right in between the water pump and the front cover and the intake manifold that pushes water through there. So we got to drain the water out of the top end, pull that apart, and then you can easily just swap those over. At least that's the plan as we see it now. And this is our quadrijet. We are not going to touch this whatsoever. It is set up as it's going to be set up. We're not going to make any adjustments to that. We are obviously running in-car headers, so they're not the big out-swept dyno headers you normally would see, which is why you have heat shielding here so I don't fry Bob's electronics. But this also gives us a much more true to performance kind of number than most of your dyno headers. Alright, so we're going to run it back like we did yesterday, verify where we're starting from. .366, 410.
What was you at yesterday? The only two I got up on this screen is the last two. And yesterday we was at 367. Today we're at 366.
That could just be oil temperature.
Well, that's 1 horse.
Yeah.
1 horse. It's 7 foot-pounds of torque is what we're down from yesterday. But we're different. Our correction factor on the weather is a decent amount.
Yeah.
See, this is the correction factor throwing in 1.068 to 1.58.
Yeah. But realistically, they lay over pretty well.
Yeah.
So that'll give us our...
Yeah, so this one here, we shut it off on time at right here. Yesterday we ran it out to here. We didn't see the need. I'm going clear to 65.
Yeah.
So you can see they're just the overlay pretty close. There's another on the time. Let me move this up here. And so right in here in the mid range was the 1 horsepower difference. So if we bring this down here and look at this area here, the power with that area there was 355, 335, 342.
So there's a 7 horsepower difference.
7 horsepower difference at 4365.
Okay. Now we don't have oil temp on this either. So
No, I did not put oil temp on there.
okay.
I didn't. Your Pontiacs are so hard to get kind of accurate temperature out of unless you was to put it in a pan.
Yeah.
So I started it this morning, warmed it up a little bit, put some heat in it, and then we went to lunch and we warmed it up a little bit, got water temperature up and ran it. I think it's pretty close.
Yeah.
But we're only one off here.
We're one off horsepower wise, and I think you're probably literally just an oil temp difference between the two.
Yeah, no,
because if you go to the one before that, it was 364.5 and 414.
Yeah.
So
we were between these two on that one.
Yeah. Margin of error.
Yeah. We started out with the other timing at 402, and so yeah, we're right there.
Okay. So I would say that's a good start for our base. What we're really trying to do is see what the difference moves as far as the power band goes, where it makes power and how much power it makes. Not necessarily is it going to make a bunch more. We weren't really expecting to make more power than it made yesterday. Yeah, I'd say let's go ahead and do the Torker next. So this is a Torker II. We're going to run this manifold. One thing we will note here is going to be the fact that this does not have the quadrojet spacing. That is quadrojet spacing. That is not quadrojet spacing. So we are going to have to run an adapter on this. So that may skew our numbers a little bit, give you guys a little bit more to argue about, but just in plain transparency, this does not have a quadrojet spacing set up on it. Half-inch wrench. Swap her over. So what are you expecting to see out of the Torker?
Me?
Yeah. Gotta get you on record here. I intended to have the right intake manifold. I'll have to have word with my hot rod parts supplier guy, Terry. That's going to throw off our numbers a bit with that adapter in there. Just use the water pump to pump all the water out.
Turn it off.
You get Bob instead of ratcheting wrenches. 20 quarter turns at a time. Covers. The lip of the valve cover covers the bottom of the intake manifold. Try to pull it straight up.
Oh, you're mean when you're moving it?
Well, that whole block there is up.
That one didn't fit that.
Probably I can pull this one off. It'll give us enough to walk it this way.
Yeah, I know, I figured that.
Think that gets you enough?
You know, let's look at it. Well, you got it all. Wanna look at it?
Okay, if you want.
Lots of oil?
Yeah.
Here we go there.
See if that thing fits without moving the valve cover? I'll go straight down. Yes, it will. Interesting. Okay.
See how the holes line up.
Valve cover's back on. We've got a little bit of a tight bolt up here in the corner. Versus fighting with it, we're just going to go ahead and run a normal bolt in there. Otherwise, we're good to go. Now, this is a single plane manifold, so it does not have dual plane. It is still kind of a low-rise intake, though, so it would fit under a normal hood, but it is single plane. And one of the arguments you're going to always have, and I'll start that argument now, is single plane versus dual plane. Generally speaking, the drivability of dual plane is going to be better than the drivability of single plane. It's the reason basically all factory manifolds are dual plane. But on the higher RPM applications or race car applications, single plane is usually almost always going to outrun what a dual plane will. So while this is not a lot of difference as far as physical height goes, it should be a lot of difference as far as physical airflow goes. See the pocket there? And I'll show you what the other one looks like for those of you who are not really understanding what I'm talking about here. Versus you've got an upper step and a lower step here on a dual plane. So typically speaking, this is going to flow with nothing in there. It's going to flow better on the higher end. It's going to allow more volume of air. See there? It's going to allow, this goes all the way down, so it's going to allow more volume of air through that process. But usually speaking, it does that at the expense of lower end torque, which we'll be able to see in our dyno graph and our actual numbers. So the big question that I don't really have an answer for you is the drivability, is the lower end torque enough that it affects the drivability of the vehicle? Bob, being a race car guy, and all those guys always run single planes, right? Bill swears by single planes. Billy runs single planes. All those guys, they run single planes on their street cars, whether or not they're street cars or not. But you know, if the motor makes enough torque down low, even with a single plane, why does it matter? If your carburetor is properly set up and runs right, why does it matter? We'll see. We'll find out.
No, so I need to do this.
Yes, and then this. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Also, complete transparency, we are going to have to run a spacer on this. So this is a 1/2 inch spacer.
Where is that other thin gasket? I kind of...
You took it yesterday.
I took it!
You took it.
Alright, I'll find it.
It's a 1/2 inch spacer that does the adapting from a square bore to a quadrajet style. So you can see the difference here to be able to adapt that down. Typically speaking, when you increase the volume underneath the carburetor in here, it is going to rob torque to generate horsepower, typically speaking. I've done this a number of times and tested a lot of different things on these, and that's basically how it always works out, is you're going to lose horsepower, you're going to lose torque, you're going to gain horsepower. So we'll see how that works out. I imagine it's going to work out exactly like I think it's going to. But just being transparent with you guys. Well, that is designed to adapt with a dual pattern. That is a single pattern. We cannot run a bolt down through this and hold this on.
Your viewers are going to say you should have knew better.
But what we can do is just bolt that on.
But we're not comparing apples to apples.
Right, now we're apples and tangerines.
Yeah. Because whether this makes more or less, it's going to be...
What if we drill this out and run a bolt through this? Engineered a solution. Allen heads. We captured some nuts underneath here. Don't ask how we did it. It was miraculous. But we got captured nuts underneath here. We use Allen heads to be able to bolt this down. Then we can run our studs into those. Bing, bang, boom. Ta-da! Problem solved. All right, we are all back in one piece. Ported vacuum set up correctly, or our manifold vacuum is set up correctly. All of our holes should be plugged. Everything should be running the way it's supposed to be.
now we're obviously going to start with a basically cold block. So this is cool to the touch. So we are going to have to heat this thing back up again to be able to put heat back in the motor as well as into the oil. So we'll have to fire it up and let it run for a little bit. But we have engineered our solution. Not exactly the apples to apples I wanted to give you, but pretty dang close. And it'll give us our idea about whether or not this makes sense. I don't know that I've ever had, I know that I have. I've never had a single plane on a street car. Like a car that I actually daily drove. So I don't know that I don't know. I'm interested to see how this works. Being able to run a single plane low rise that will clear a hood is kind of a tempting thing. Because that, also given the fact that I could just bolt a ATM carburetor on it, might be an interesting idea for future upgrades on this car. Because this is just running an old school Performer intake manifold. The crappiest, littlest, not flowingest intake you possibly could. The reasoning for that was because we actually needed to choke this motor down to make as little power as possible, or I was going to break everything that's attached to it, because it's a Turbo 350 with a Pontiac 10 bolt in the rear of it. So we purposely put a bad intake manifold on it just so it wouldn't make a ton of power. Now it does make a ton of torque, 520 foot-pounds of torque. It made 400 horsepower at like barely off of idle. But now that that car is getting a little bit of race duty, maybe it would make sense to switch over into a single plane to make it more fun for race duty stuff. Especially if we can prove that it's not going to affect my daily drivability of that at all. That's a hard thing to not do. So maybe that's smart. We'll see. Got a pretty good sound to it for a little Pontiac 350. I like it. Man, another absolutely gorgeous day up here. I couldn't live in the country again. I grew up actually a lot in the country as a younger lad. But I'll tell you what a place to just kind of go and relax, other than some guy that keeps making V8 noises out of his building. Beautiful up here. And 5600, 394. Let's take the spacer into the consideration. Typically speaking, what I've seen out of a 1-inch spacer is like you gain 5 horsepower but lose 10 foot-pounds of torque. So we gained 4 horsepower, but we lost 15 foot-pounds torque.
Yep.
Just bolting a torker on it doesn't get you more power.
Well, it got us more power, but it lost us torque.
Right. And a lot of it.
Yep, you're right.
So, in addition to the fact that it's a torker, single plane torker with a spacer on it, which is even more volume underneath the carburetor. So, if we were running it without the spacer, it would have probably made almost essentially the same power. It really wouldn't have moved the power.
Yeah, well, it lost quite a bit down here in the bottom.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right. Below 4,500 RPMs,
yeah.
which is, again, where your drivability is.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm glad I wasted a bunch of money on that intake manifold. Because what I was truly considering was, does it make sense to put that on my 455? Because I don't need piles more, all at low end torque. It would be nice to be able to gain extra horsepower on the top end, but what we're seeing at this is it's not really worth it, at least at this level. This is a 9-to-1 350. Would it make a difference on a 455? Maybe. But I don't know if we're doing myth busting, but I would say I would still choose the RPM over this. You want to try to run it back?
Yeah, well, I think we'll make another pass on it, see if it
Okay.
makes it better.
Okay. And we did not touch timing, right?
Nope.
Okay. Timing's still the same where we was. So, make another pass, see if it gets better, gets happier.
Yeah, see if it changes any.
Maybe if the camshaft was designed to spin higher, maybe it would make a difference there.
Well, they've even lost out here at the last little bit.
It did make power at a higher RPM. It did pull 200 RPM further.
Yeah.
So,
At the higher peak.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Pull it again.
Yeah, it was cooled off.
Back our results up.
It's already cooled off.
Yeah.
I left the water on.
Now, again, results are going to vary here, right? There's always kinds of, is the engine temp too low? Is the engine temp too hot? Is the oil hot or cold? We're trying to make that as uniform as possible, but you're going to always be able to have that argument. Anytime you go racing, you're going to be able to have that argument. It is what it is. There's only so many environmental factors you can challenge or you can control. In this way, we're doing our very best to be able to do this. We're running it, generally speaking, at basically the same temperature, so that thinner oil isn't so much of an issue. Welcome. Sacrificing my hearing for you. So, what do we see?
377.
Oh.
398.
Oh. Okay. So 377. So we picked up 7 more horsepower at the same RPM. We picked up 4 foot-pounds of torque. Okay.
Still shows it goes lean on one bank.
Yeah, whether that's a...
Why don't we need to go out there and look and see if we have something leaking? Because we didn't have that on the other side.
You think we got a leak on
I
a...
don't know, I'm just saying that we didn't have that before.
Yeah. So what Bob's talking about here is we've got 2 different channels, left bank, right bank, that pull our O2 signal. This is one bank, This is the other one, where it shows that it's running considerably more lean, and then it drops into rich mode, but it's still running leaner, half a point or so, than the other bank is. So, pull a plug. This is the driver's side plug?
No,
passenger side. Passenger side plug. Doesn't look terrible. But what you don't want to be doing is running the motor super lean up here and losing power. Also possibly burning up a motor. It made better power all the way across the board there.
They look pretty identical. You know, we can't.
I mean, nothing that would concern me.
You can see the small brown tint way down in there. Same on this one.
Yeah.
They look pretty equal.
Yep. I think we're okay. Now, this also could be an issue of maybe we've got some sort of a leak or something that's going on and it's seeing unmetered air here. We haven't touched the exhaust, so there shouldn't be anything that just generated a random vacuum leak, because if we look back at our other holes here, see, we don't have that lean condition. But if we go back and we look at running that dual plane, what we were talking about with running the Performer RPM, let's compare these two runs, right? So this most recent run, which was 377 horsepower and 398 foot-pounds of torque. Okay? So this is our most recent run, most power we've made, and that's with that Torker II. 378 horsepower, at 5,600 RPMs, 398 horsepower, or foot-pounds of torque at 4,300 RPMs. And we compare that back to our yesterday's numbers, which is this guy here. Look at that difference. All of this time under the curve that it's making torque all the way down here. I mean, we're talking massive difference here. You're looking engine power 232 to 195, so you're 37 foot-pounds of torque difference at 3,200 RPMs. I mean, that's enormous. So all this time under the curve, you're missing out on power. They do line up here, and it does tend to make more power up at the top end. But unless you're racing or you're only driving the car up here in the 4,500 plus range, you've got more actual power down here in the drivable range. There's a really important term there that I just kind of threw out, which is the time under the curve. Time under the curve, for me, is the most important part. When you're doing a drag race car, you're launching that thing at whatever, 3 grand, 4 grand, 5 grand, whatever you're launching at. And that motor stays up at the top. It stays in those high RPMs. It never drops down. So it doesn't matter how much power you make at 2,000 or 3,000 RPMs, you're never gonna be down there. Whereas a street car, you're coming off of a stoplight at idle and you're gonna be accelerating. You wanna have that power down low to be able to enjoy that drive down low. Otherwise, the power, it has got no power. Think about like driving a muscle car versus a Honda Civic. You've got to run those revs up, or a Harley versus a Ninja. You know, it's got that big torquey motor where it pushes you down the road, versus a smaller motor. You got to spin it up into higher RPMs and makes power up on the top. Both are fine. Both are enjoyable. In my world, especially given this is a Pontiac and it's designed to build bunches of torque down low, that makes more sense to me. It just does. I don't know why I would do that unless I was planning to drag race this motor. Because it does make 10 horsepower more. Now, some of that's also the spacer. So, you know, let's call it 400 foot-pounds of torque. Maybe we'll split the difference. It makes 405 and 373. So it makes 5 horsepower more, and 5 horsepower more and 5 foot-pounds of torque less. But the time under the curve just doesn't make any sense. I think we've got that one done. You want to run this thing again, or you want to switch over?
Whatever you want.
I think we've proven what this thing does. All right, let's switch over to the next one.
Curious to see what happens on the next one.
Yeah. Is that AFR like something with some sort of an air leak underneath the adapter, maybe? If we see that AFR difference with this next intake manifold, though, we got something else going on. So, which would you prefer? More horsepower at the top end, or the more torque on the bottom?
Well, that one here got better. A little better.
Still drastically different. 30 foot-pounds of torque difference. Below 4,000 RPM.
Yeah. Probably the other one on the street machine.
Yeah. I think in a racing application,
Yeah.
where you're only going to be living in 4,000 to 7,000 RPMs, this makes sense.
Which has always been a... What are you gonna do with all these intake manifolds?
Huh?
What are you gonna do with all these intake manifolds?
Good question. Okay. Put that back in the box. We might return that one. Next up, old school power. Obviously there's no heat crossover here, so all you have is your intake ports. Very cool. It is dual plane, so we should see our torque return, and it'll be interesting to see how this also affects our high-end RPM. Huh? The what? This.
Give it to me so I can get it done.
There's less pipe plugs on this one too. So I would expect to see our torque come back because it's a dual plane, and we'll see what it does for our horsepower. Don't lose that. This little guy, by the way, in the Pontiac world, let me tell you how much of a pain that is. That little gasket that sits between the intake manifold and the top of the housing, when that fails, it essentially will pump all of your coolant out of your car, and you will immediately overheat to the face of the sun. The 350 non-HO motor that's sitting out there came apart for exactly that reason. That gasket had failed, and we ended up running that motor up to literally face of the sun hot, to the point where the motor wouldn't even turn over again. But didn't end up doing any real damage to the motor, which is good. Should probably put my camera down and help you, huh? Well, as we're working on getting this fitted, we realized we have a problem because these heads do not have those crossovers blocked off. We're not going to be able to put those in there. So we would have an enormous exhaust leak just firing up in here. So we can't use this. I'm sorry for making you come up here and do this. Drive all the way up here to drop this off. This would have been cool to be able to test, but I have no way of blocking this off. That exhaust crossover. Show you on these. Where it's got that exhaust crossover, you either have to block that off in the head or have it blocked off in the intake, but that's not going to work because we don't have an exhaust crossover block off for that. So can't run that. So we can run that. Let's probably figure that out. Let's look and see if I can even run this other one, because I don't remember if that's got exhaust crossover blocked off, or it's just a setup like this where it's open. Cut that box open and see what's up. Survey says that's got a blacked off flange, so we're ready to rock and roll with this. So this is a low profile single plane quadrijet style, but it also has the block off plates for the intake or for the exhaust crossover. So there will be no exhaust crossover, but we've at least got a plate there to be able to keep it, versus this one has been modified and they cut that piece out. See how there's no plate here? It doesn't have a plate, so you can't seal this. Whereas this does have that plate, so. Sorry, sir. I wish we could have used your intake manifold. It would have been interesting to see. Unfortunately, I don't literally have a way to do this. You can basically force a plug into the head to be able to close off those exhaust crossovers. But because I'm not going to do that long term, that's not really an option. So I'm sorry. I apologize. I should have caught that before. But I appreciate you watching. Hopefully you're enjoying this. All right, let's get this intake manifold back off here and get this other one on. And then that'll be the end of the show. What do you think this guy's gonna make? What, the other guy, the Speedmaster, single plane, low profile, with EG or with exhaust gas crossover block off. What do you think it's gonna make? Same as the last one, Torker, more power, less power. Let me know what you think. Put it in the comments below. Are you having fun yet? Which one would you run? Which one do you actually run on your hot rod / race car? And there's a big difference in my mind, at least what the difference is between a hot rod and a race car.
I think you're around 10 minutes. You're supposed to be all done.
I was monologuing, Bob.
Oh my gosh.
I have to tell the people at home and teach them.
I'm an hour away.
Huh?
I'm an hour away from crashing.
Give all that barbecue. We got a lot of things going on. Just think of
this is me. I'm a 4 to 6 hour day off.
Yeah.
I am. Cap still off? Yep. I think that's clean out.
Okay. Here's our look at it. So we got one plug that's got to go there. Pretty simple. Should be okay. As long as our bolt holes all line up. I'm gonna press that intake gaskets before this thing goes on. Make sure we don't have any kind of leaks. mean, is there even a way that you can get enough bolts in this thing for it to seal? It can't come forward anymore from where that is. You want to try to pull the valve covers loose and see if we could
I don't think that's anything to do with it.
herky-jerky it around a little bit?
I will tell you.
Unless it's hitting the pan.
Yeah, it's hitting the pan on that side. Hit the pan on that side.
Probably.
No, it's just resting on it, but it's hitting the pan on that side.
If we massage that pan, will it give us enough?
Maybe. I don't know. I guess we're gonna have to try it. You know the way it works. It don't work now.
Oh, Austin, you perpetual optimist, you. We're gonna just chuck a bunch of different intake manifolds on it. It's gonna work fine. Everything's gonna fit.
Yeah, that never works.
In my mind, it worked.
No, it's in all of our minds it works like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's always supposed to just be an hour job.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll get this done in 2 hours.
2 hours. 2 hours. I mean, technically,
I mean, we're only 15
we did do
over.
lunch.
We did do lunch. We got back 12:30. We're only 15 over.
Right. So we're almost there. Except for Bob's getting out his dental tools.
You can tell I've worked on Pontiacs before.
We'll resume this tale in a little bit. Maybe.
It's got to go forward in there, don't it?
Looking at the ports, this is actually great on that side.
But I'm not in the hole, am I?
I don't think you can get a bolt to that, maybe?
So do we need to egg the bolts out? Well, we got to get the intake to fit the holes.
Yeah. That's not terrible. How do yours look?
That's how I go forward 1/8 of an inch.
1/8 of an inch?
It's got to go to match those holes in that there.
So we don't have that.
You don't have that.
We're up clean up against this, and this doesn't even have the grommet.
So you would have to go in there and hand port them. But I ain't sure that the center would allow you to do that.
Yeah, because the wall's there.
You know, I don't think you could go the front one that way, but I think the 1 and 2 or 1 and 3 would actually.
Yeah. To get the matchup, you'd run into the wall. And our holes on these are.
Well, I mean, we'd have to grind them to get them before.
I'm not in the mood to spend $400 in time and labor to make this work. Well,
that is perfect back there in that one.
yeah, that looks great.
I see you're gonna have to go down with the grinder on that one.
Right.
Well, that one there ain't bad.
I mean, I think you could do this with bolt. Just get the grinder out and you can elongate the bolt hole. But our port mismatch.
See, look at that one. No, this one here is the worst.
I mean, that's kind of bad. I don't know if you guys are gonna be able to see this. And that, I apologize for the epilepsy. The pen's on a pen light's on a same speed as my camera refresh rate. You can see the you're missing 15% of that front port probably. Well, is it worth it or just say to hell with it? I say to hell with it.
This needs to go forward.
What if we cut a bunch off the nose of this thing?
See, this needs to go down. This side goes down. And it may be just that the angle is actually off a little bit too. You know, with us milling that block, we may be causing other problems on this manifold, but...
So the other one fit fine.
I know. Well, I mean, all I had to do was grind the bottom like you see me do on the other.
Yeah. But we gotta come
on
forward.
both motors. I do it on both motors. No.
Well, like, this doesn't line up down here either.
Yeah. It's got a little bit better.
I'm not gonna do this. Because we could get the bolt holes to line up. We could do that. The problem's going to be, it still needs to come forward. This is lined up nice in the back. This is not lined up nice in the front. So, if we even get this thing bolted up correctly, at least bolted down, our port matching is not going to be correct. We're going to be off somewhere. It needs to come forward, which means we're going to need to cut some of this off, which will shift all of this part forward, which might make this cylinder better, but it's going to make this cylinder worse. And that's not going to give us any kind of repeatable, honest results. Could we make it work? Probably. Am I going to spend half a day doing the machining to be able to do this, or paying Bob to do the machining to be able to do this? No, I'm not. And that sucks, and I apologize, because I really was hoping to be able to make this interesting and for more than what I did. This is not the episode I was hoping to be able to produce for you guys, but in all honesty, this is the hot rodding world that we have nowadays. A lot of the stuff that you have just doesn't fit. You got to modify it. Even when it's brand new out of the box, it doesn't work. It's bad. The casting is poor. The assembly is poor. The metallurgy is poor. Whatever. It's just the world that we live in anymore. It sucks because I really wanted to be able to just bolt this on and see what this did. I think this would have been a very interesting test. I think we're going to lose a boatload of low-end torque, and I think we're going to probably pick up 10 or 15 horsepower on the top of the end. But at the end of the day, I can't test this because it's not something I'm going to spend the time to work on. So, I'm sorry. At least we got the one test, sort of, with the Torker II versus the Performer RPM. At least we got that information down, and it played out the way we think it was going to play out, with Torker making more horsepower because it's a single plane versus the dual plane that's going to make more torque and less horsepower up on the top end. I would say we still go back together with the Performer RPM, though, the way we started this whole process. Yeah?
Yep.
I don't think the gain in that for what I'm going to be doing makes any sense.
I agree.
So, even with a spacer on it, it just doesn't make sense. So, not exactly the day we wanted, but we got to have barbecue. It's a beautiful day outside. I have to put my car back in order to be able to pack back together in order to be able to drive back to work.
Carburetor's off.
At least the carburetor's off. There you go. Always look on the bright side of life. Thanks, Bob. All right, guys, we're going to wrap this one up here. Not the episode I wanted to bring you guys, but it's an episode in real life. This is how things really actually work. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Maybe you learned something. Maybe it verified your own personal bias. I'm generally curious. What do you guys run in your street cars? What do you actually run? Keep in mind, this is a smaller displacement Pontiac 350. It's a 350 cubic inch Pontiac. So it doesn't make piles and piles of torque, but I think it makes enough torque, especially down low, that it's going to be a really fun daily driver in something like that. So, that basically wraps up our dyno stuff. We have nothing else technically to dyno right now. At least you and I don't. You have plenty of other things to do. It's been a long time coming, but we're finally done. You can get rid of me. Pay your bills and get the hell out of my building.
Man, we might clear out some inches.
There you go. And some racks for sure.
Racks.
For sure. Yeah, a whole cart of Pontiac stuff.
You got rent.
A whole cart of Pontiac stuff. All right, guys. Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. I hope to see you around on another video in the future. I'm going to have obviously 2 Pontiacs that I get to do now play with. That one goes in my 1971 Le Mans Sport. That one goes in maybe my 1968 Le Mans. We'll see. Stay tuned. Thanks for being here. See you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye. Back together. Drive this thing home.